The embattled Home Affairs Department is about to undergo a shake-up. Well, that's according to its Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. He tabled before Parliament how the department is going to utilise its R9.4 billion budget for this financial year. Top of the agenda, tackling the endemic corruption at the country's borders and fixing the constant system crashes which often result in poor services and long queues. The department has also revealed that investigations are underway to finalise disciplinary hearings of more Home Affairs officials involved in the matter of issuing permanent residency permits to Shepherd Bushiri and his family. Now, this follows the recent dismissal of the department's Chief Director of Permitting, who recommended that Bushiri and his family be granted permanent residence for permits. Now, for more on this and other issues related to Home Affairs, we've got the Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. Minister, thank you. Always a pleasure having you. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Leon. Good morning to the listeners and viewers. Thank you very much.
To quote you, the words you use, the unsavoury state of affairs at the Home Affairs Department. I mean, we see just the top, I suppose. There is so much happening at the bottom. How bad is it? How much work is it going to take to clean up this department?
Well, it will take some work, as I've said in the budget speech, especially on the corruption side. It really needs cleaning and it's thorough cleaning, because there's no way we can't afford not to, because otherwise the country will be in trouble if we don't do so. I mean, when you look at things like passport fraud, it's not just a fraud ending in the country. It affects the standing of the country outside for those who are travelers, very innocent travelers like yourself. When you go to other countries, they will start viewing your passport really suspiciously if they know that there are people who are involved in fraud. And I think in Soweto yesterday on Peace 3, there's a security expert actually who outlined that if authorities don't clamp down hard on this issue, it's going to be difficult for travelers from South Africa. And we can't afford that, Leon. That's why we have got to clean up as much as we can.
Yeah, and that's the reality. I mean, this is the lived experience of the citizens of this country. I mean, trying to apply for a passport and standing in winding queues with one official serving an entire station, and you have to come back day after day after day, and nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows which queue to stand in. There isn't any service. There's no help. There's this sense of, I mean, I'm just talking at a service level of people working at Home Affairs. It is just that it's almost like they're doing you a favor, and it really is. And people have been waiting months for their passports to no avail. How are you going to get to the bottom of this? Obviously, hiring more people is what you announced yesterday, but there's got to be more to it.
Well, as I said yesterday, I said these are, it's a big elephant in the room, what we are experiencing. And I outlined about 13 interventions that we are doing. One of them, Leon, is the fact that for the past 5 years, Home Affairs was not allowed to hire extra people because Treasury has ordered that the compensation of employees had reached a ceiling. So when people were leaving, they were not being replaced when they left by natural attrition. And the population was growing, and obviously there were no replacements. And worse still, we unfortunately lost 40 frontline workers during COVID-19. And obviously, during COVID, there are services we couldn't provide because it was not possible under the lockdown levels. Now, when we open up, people have been waiting for about 18 months to 24 months for their documents. They just come in large numbers. Now, staffing levels have gone down to 39% in the front offices, which is very, very low. Fortunately, we developed a plan and handed it over to Treasury. They did come to the party by giving us 266 million. But it's a long, long way to go, because that 266 million is only going to move us to 42% as far as civic services are concerned. Other areas, of course, are better, like IT. We've got 61% staff in there, but in civil services, frontline offices is 39%. It's going to move to 42 because we have now just advertised more than 500 posts for civic services. But as I'm saying, it's a long time to go. Then the other issue, which I'm sure you are talking about, is the issue of downtime where our systems are always down. And that's why I spent more than 80% of my budget speech outlining the 13 steps that we are going to be undertaking this year to deal with this whole issue of long queues and our systems downtime.
Yeah, and that is frustrating. I mean, it is a most frustrating thing when, you know, the system is down, you try to go online, the system is down, that you arrive, you stand in queues for hours, and the one person serving us says the system is down. This system you're talking about, when is it going to be operating fully at its best capacity so that we can start getting to the backlog? I mean, let me actually ask you, before you answer when it'll be fully operational, how big is the backlog? What are we looking at? How many people are waiting for their passports?
We don't really learn when it comes to passports. If you don't meet systems downtime, that means if our systems are not down, we are able to produce a passport in 5 to 13 days. On that one, we are really doing very well. Perhaps it's also because there are not many people compared to IDs and other documents. There are not many people in South Africa reading passport, comparatively speaking. So on that score, we do very well. 90% of our passports are produced within 5 days to 18 days as a standard, not more than that. And sometimes people get them even after 2 days and they get very excited. So on that score, we ride. But the issue of system downtime, as I said yesterday, has got a multiplicity of problems. And one of the solutions, as I said, is the entire revamping of the entire network at SITA, which is the State Information Technology Agency that provides us with IT. They are fortunately revamping their entire network for 400 million, and we are very happy and excited about that. Secondly, they've increased internet capacity, and there's no government department in the whole country that uses more internet than Home Affairs. Mm-hmm. And other government departments can go on, even with some small problems happening at internet. For Home Affairs, you get stuck. You just don't go anywhere. So the fact that SITA has introduced 3 failovers, what they call failovers, that means systems that are going to add redundancy, means extra network. They've put that in Tshwane, they've put that in Cape Town, and they've put that in eThekwini. It will ensure that at least we've got some redundancy, so that when the systems are down in one, 2 of them are still functional. So that's one of the things that are happening. In Home Affairs itself, we've bought new 136 routers and 150 switches, which we've put up in 136 offices. We are just now to install 112 routers and 68 switches. But more than that, we have actually observed that when people go to the banks, they don't struggle like we do in Home Affairs in terms of downtime. And we were wondering, how do the banks do it? So we approached them, and so they are giving us 8 of their best IT engineers who work with us in Home Affairs. They've already been vetted. We are finalizing final contracts. They'll come and work with us, and we're asking them, can you stabilize our network like it is stabilized in the banks? And then from there, they'll also work with us by providing some of the services in the banks, as I've said in my previous budget speeches.
So what we're hearing as well, I mean, obviously this system update is sorely needed. I mean, I just know trying to book an appointment for my children whose passports had expired, and this was not physically standing in a queue, this was trying to get onto the system. It was down for 2 days. I then couldn't get an appointment. Then it was difficult to pay. So, you know, this is what you're saying. They're working on this. This is going to be fixed, and hopefully soon. Added to that, you're going to be opening up about 15 new offices in shopping malls around the country, and you're hoping this will be operational by September. Do you think this is going to help, especially if we get the systems in place, i.e. not crashing systems, because that is at the key of all of this?
Well, look, we are doing all sorts of things to try and deal with long queues, all sorts of things. But opening our offices in the malls, that will not fix the system downtown. it will just help for people not to queue in the rain or in the sun, to have ample space, because malls have huge spaces, but also to do their work in a relatively good atmosphere, because our aim is that when you get to the mall, you get given a number, you can go on with your shopping, and your number will be called later, so that you don't have to sit there queuing and being very anxious. But also, Leanne, remember that what I said was the problem we are having in Home Affairs is that our buildings, our Home Affairs offices are not custom made. When you look at the police station, a clinic or a school, they all serve the public. They are public institutions, and none of them is leased from anybody. They are custom built. Only Home Affairs offices are not custom built, and we pay a rent of 400 million every year to buildings that are leased through the Public Works Department. Now, we want to move away from that. That's why we are going to the malls. But the 15 offices you are mentioning is not at the malls, that one. It's another program whereby we have submitted to the Presidential Infrastructure Committee. We chose our 15 busiest offices. We want to build them custom-made. In other words, we want to build them for Home Affairs purposes, where nobody will have to will queue in the sun or in the rain or sneaking across other shops and all that, but will be inside very comfortable while they are being served. And those are the 15 offices that we said were submitted to the Presidential Infrastructure Committee. They are going to be built via a PPP. But we are saying having to start constructing those offices obviously will take a bit of time. But in the meantime, we will be utilizing the malls as such. That's why the issue of the malls came into being. But the mainstay of our intervention will be if the 8 IT specialists or engineers from one of the country's leading banks who are going to work with us will be able to fix our system. If the 400 million rand of fixing the whole total network of SETA is going to work, the routers and switches that was we're inserting will work and make sure that our systems don't go down.
Yeah. Minister, I'm going to ask my team if I can steal just 2 more minutes or 3 minutes from the news, because, as much as we're talking to systems, and that's great, we need to sort this out. The shopping centres so far, you've highlighted Menlyn in Pretoria, Cresta Mall, Southgate Mall in Joburg, the Pavilion in eThekwini, Tiger Valley Mall in Cape Town. So we'll speak more about that in the systems. But I can't let you go without talking to the issue of corruption at the department. Seeing a high-profile arrest coming through, this in itself is a great worry. The Chief Director for Permitting at Home Affairs dismissed over the permanent residency permit issued to Shepherd Bushiri and his entire family. This has got to tell you that the rot is so deep. It's right at the top, all the way down to the bottom. Your department is plagued with corruption. Whether we're talking at the border posts, we know the corruption that happens there, and the porousness of our borders, and officials helping criminals get residency or passports or whatever the case may be. This is a major problem. Minister, what are you doing about this? How are we going to fix this?
Yes, Leah, and I'm repeating what I've said many times, that in most government departments, when they talk about corruption, they talk about supply chain, which is one unit of the department, just supply chain, where you order things. That's where they concentrate on corruption. In Home Affairs, it's not like that. Any area of Home Affairs, when you enter any of our 412 offices scattered all over the country, there could be corruption. When you enter any of the 72 ports of entry at the borders, airport and seaport, there could be corruption. When you go to our offices, inside our offices themselves, there could be corruption anyway. That's why, Leanne, Home Affairs is the only government department that has got a counter-corruption unit at the level of a branch, meaning headed by a whole deputy director general, second in charge in every government department. We're the only ones who are doing that. The other departments will have a risk manager, maybe at director level or chief director. We have got a whole counter-corruption unit. And 11 months ago, I introduced it to Parliament with 13 staff members. And I'm sure you are seeing the results. The arrest, all these things you are talking about, which you call a rod, you actually get some of them from us, where we tell you, we've arrested the Pakistani kingpin in Krugersdorp. We've arrested the Pakistani. We've arrested South African officials, Home Affairs officials. Like last week, we have arrested in Bombela. We are looking all over the country. We are going to be hearing arrests almost every day because the anti-corruption unit is very busy, but also, Leanne, because something which warmed our hearts. Since our operation in Krugersdorp, where we arrested this Pakistani and kingpin on passport fraud, South Africans have opened up, Leanne. Almost every single day, they are phoning us with tips, telling us who is doing what where. And when we investigate, we find that it's true, and we arrest them. So yesterday I announced that because of that, we are going to expand the anti-corruption unit by 12 extra people. And among them, there will be analysts, there will be researchers, and there will be investigators. More so, Leanne, the anti-corruption unit is not only just arresting. They actually study our systems, identify the loopholes, which encourages fraud and acts of malfeasance, and propose solutions. So that's why we're going to add analysts, researchers, and investigators among the 12 new staff members of anti-corruption unit to move the anti-corruption unit from 13 people to 25 people. And we'll keep on increasing it as it becomes necessary.
Okay.
But as they go on identifying loopholes, corruption levels will go down. But remember, we are also coming up with new technologies, like we've announced ABIS, that when you take your ID, it's no longer going to be only two biometrics like now, where all South Africans have got a fingerprint and a photo in our archives, in our National Population Register. We're going to add iris recognition technique. We're going to add face recognition technique. We're going to add a palm print. We are busy with a new policy which has already gone through cabinet, whereby we want children no longer to wait until they are 16 years to take an ID, but they are going to start at 10, so that we have got a fingerprint database of South Africans at a very young age.
All right.
All those are things that are in the pipeline to try and make sure that we reduce incidences of corruption.
Indeed, because, incidences of corruption, porous borders, and all of the above lending its hand to the issue of xenophobia in South Africa. And I know you've addressed this on multiple occasions. In fact, there's even been allegations of the involvement of Home Affairs with Operation Dudula. You denied that. You've denied that in the strongest of possible terms. But the reality is that we cannot ignore the fact that this is a very, very boiling cauldron. And at the heart of all of that is the fact that there is no security in place. The corruption at Home Affairs and the borders is causing a lot of angst in South Africans, and people are worried that this is going to flare up into something. Minister, how do we crack down on this? This is my final question to you. I'm sorry, I know I'm getting into trouble from my producers, but we need to talk about this. Illegal immigrants in this country, it should not be allowed. How are you dealing with this?
Leanne, I'm not sure whether I understood very well. Are you asking how are we dealing with the issues of the borders?
Illegal immigrants.
Is that the question?
Illegal immigrants in this country. It's a major issue.
Yes. Look, Leanne, as I said yesterday, if you look at my budget speech, I said if I have to start outlining these issues of immigration, which is a crisis in the country, we're not denying that. It is a crisis. I said if I am to start outlining, it will need its own budget speech on its own. And I said, for now, suffice it to say, we are overhauling the whole immigration system in the country, starting with the policies, by the way, and even changing acts, because some of them were passed at a different era. For instance, the Citizenship Act in South Africa passed in 1995. The Refugee Act passed in 1998. The Immigration Act passed in 2002. We are all revamping them all together, and we are putting a ground policy to control all of them because they were enacted without any policy. So that's a revamp we're saying. And I said overhaul means exactly that.
Okay.
They're going to be overhauled, turned upside down. And I said, work has already started in that regard. Very soon we'll be unveiling it. But when it comes to the borders, I've mentioned, as I've done before, that we concede rather to the fact that, yes, we have got porous borders. That's why Parliament passed an act to establish the Border Management Authority. And we are busy every day to establish the Border Management Authority. The commissioner and the 2 deputy commissioners who started work at the beginning of this year have already gone a long way. They've already advertised and interviewed and finished the selection process to appoint 200, the very first cohort of 200 border guards who will be posted at the most vulnerable portions of the borderline. They are doing that, and the Border Management Authority is on course because at the moment is a branch, is incubated as a branch in Home Affairs. By 1st of April next year, there will be a standalone, what they call Schedule 3A entity. That means an entity on its own, whose job is to deal with the borders, with the full staff, with equipment, with everything. But at the moment, they have started the work, still incubated legally as a branch in Home Affairs.
All right.
So that's what we're trying to do.
All right, Minister, thank you. Thanks always for your time. A very, very important issue. And as you say, this is something we could focus on for hours because there's so many issues. A crisis at Home Affairs, indeed. That's our Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, talking to us about this. All right, I know it's late. It's almost 10 minutes past 7, but let's get into other news stories that